Welcome to the Grace Channel. I am Grace. We are bravely creating with wild abandon that which sets our hearts on fire. And we are so blessed, so honored to have the most amazing guest today, Mike Gifford. And he has sent in the best 3 questions that I've ever had. So you're going to want to hear this amazing highlight. Mike Gifford, welcome. Welcome, Mike. How are you today?
Thank you. And thank you for asking me. And I got to say, I miss John's Place not being open. So I'm looking forward for us in Utah. I'm looking forward to us having that community space to go to too.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it too. I am too. I appreciate that. We'll have some Grace on Fires live. Maybe you'll be our first guy live on Grace on Fire at John's Place.
I'll be there.
And I know you wanted to meet at John's Place, but this is our next best thing until we can open. So we'll get there. It's meant to be. So I have your first question. I love your questions so much. What is the Say Yes Foundation and how did that come about?
So the Say Yes Foundation was my attempt to focus on what I want in life and to prompt others to do the same thing. I got into 12 steps for sexual addiction almost 40 years ago. Wow, I'm old. And I spent the first 2 years of that time going to meetings, kind of bowing my head in shame and saying, I'm Mike, I'm a sexaholic. That was good for me because 12-step allowed me to realize that even if I couldn't do it by myself, I could get sober, and that we talk about the higher power, that I had a higher power that I believe today is within me as well as outside, but that with that higher power's help, I could get sober. And so 2 years sober, I was very thrilled. I was finally everything I always told everyone I was. But I realized that I wanted something more than just sobriety. And so that's when my wife and I started focusing on, well, what is it that we want? If I'm still bowing my head in shame and saying, I'm Mike, I'm a sexaholic, what could I do that would raise my head in pride? And we went to a sexaholics retreat in Arizona, in Tucson, Arizona. And we were doing all this standard stuff there. And this has been my focus for a while. So I thought about it. I took a huge breath. And instead of lowering my head, I raised my hands and my face. I said, I'm a holy part of God. And I shook because that affirmation was, how dare I? And yet there was a part within me that said that is exactly who not only you are, but who everyone is. And so we came home from that, and we were meeting with a couple friend of ours, and we came up with the idea that we need to focus on what we want, not what we don't want. So I actually came up with the 12 steps of love that use the 12-step, but again, it's about what acts of love have I done instead of, what acts of attrition, and so we focused on that. Let me just give your listeners a real quick example. My wife, when she would pray with the kids back then, went from saying, coaching them to say, and bless me that I don't have bad dreams, to saying, bless me that I will have good dreams. And so if I were to say to your audience, don't think about a red apple, I doubt there's anyone out there that didn't see a red apple. The brain doesn't understand don't or not, or it doesn't understand negative. What my brain heard was red apple. So the Say Yes Foundation, we started it in 1987, and the whole impetus was, instead of don't think about a red apple, think about a green apple. And when I say think about a green apple, you don't have to go to red to get to green. You can go straight there. So our focus has been since that time to focus on what we want. And I guess for some people, they would kind of call that, some 12-steppers don't like the idea of me walking away from my primary addiction and focusing on what I want. I know some 12-steppers that are 40 years sober and still need to be in the meeting. I need to be in a meeting where I can focus on who I truly am, not who I thought I was. I thought I was a sexaholic, and I had actions that matched that, but in reality, I'm a part of God, and that's what my focus is today. So that's what Say Yes is about.
Wow, that you just said so much. And I love one of John's main channelings, and it's on his main card, and it says you will always get more of what you focus on. And it's to focus on it. And I'm always getting deeper integrations of that. And we'll share more in the conversations about that. But to focus on a purpose, and this purpose of what you want, creating the Say Yes Foundation, is so powerful. And if you are going to get sober, you're wanting to get sober so that you can make a difference in your life, and you can have a purpose, and you could be a positive influence in the world. And you want more than that. So I really acknowledge all of that. It's so powerful. And before we finish, I have your second question here. I love it. I love your second and third question. But could you tell us just a teeny bit more about what the Say Yes Foundation does for people, for the world, the community?
So initially, our main function was bringing speakers to town that had the same message we did. Most of them were 12-step. Some were authors. We brought M. Scott Peck to town, the gentleman who wrote The Road Less Traveled. So we just bring people to town that reflected that same, what do we want in life? What can a positive life, a happy, joyful life look like? Today, we haven't brought speakers to town for quite a while. I'm working more on my writings. We've written our first of 3 books called When Love Hurts, A True Story of Abuse and Addiction. And that title may fit in with our second question as well. But so we're more focused on individual speaking wherever we're invited, like here, and writing and putting our writing out on social media.
Wow, sharing positive messages.
Exactly.
Awesome. And I mean, with COVID, that's slowed everything down, and maybe there'll be a time where you'll be back to bringing, you're speaking yourself and bringing more people back into town. And there's always a time for everything.
Yes.
And but what you're doing now by sharing your own personal messages and writing your own book, focusing on that for right now.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Amazing. So are you ready for your second question?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I understand your personal mantra is love is my answer. Please explain that and tell us why that is important.
Whew, deep breath, Mike. So going back to my book, When Love Hurts, that book was about a conditional love that I grew up with, and that most of us grew up with. Even the best intending parents tend to say, don't do this. And, that they tell us sometimes more often what's wrong with us than what's right with us. So most of us grew up wounded and feeling like we're not okay. I grew up with that to a large extent. In fact, my governing belief from my teen years into mid-30s was, if you knew me the way I know me, you'd hate me the way I hate me. That was what I lived with, but I also believed that if you could just look good, it would be okay. So I put on this face. I was a Jekyll and Hyde. I was an active part of the Mormon church, and I especially loved working with the young kids, and I was trying to help them to not be what I saw myself as. So if you think about Jekyll and Hyde, there's this evil person and this wonderful person. I believe that that evil part of me, that sexaholic, was the true me, and that other persona was a facade that I put on so people didn't know the real me. I came to learn that those were both me and could be very nicely integrated, and that I could accept all of me. I did that through, I talk about three pillars: love, forgiveness, and gratitude.
Mm.
So I learned through this process that I went through 12-step and then through Say Yes, about self-love. One of my favorite authors in those days was Robert Schuller. He was a Presbyterian minister in California, and he was well known for the Crystal Cathedral. He wrote a book called Possibility Thinking. And partway through the book, he took a moment to reflect and said, I've had people, and he did. He created visions and made them happen. He was the first, the secret person that I knew. He created this abundance, this positive life. But he talked about people who read his book and couldn't manifest like he was. And he said, it finally dawned on me the piece that I was missing was self-love.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped reading Possibility Thinking right then and went and got self-love and read it. And that was the key that I was missing. And it was like, so if I can learn to love myself, then maybe I can manifest. Maybe I can be that person that I want to be. And as I started working on that, I realized that, let me share a real personal note. At 5, I and my younger brother were raped by a male babysitter. And I blamed my mom and dad for letting that happen because they brought in a babysitter we had never had. And I blamed Jamie for it as well. I was in a Course in Miracles study group, and we would always draw a card. And the card I drew one night was, you can be right or you can be happy. And I thought, that doesn't have anything to do with me. Next week, I drew a card. You can be right or you can be happy. The third week, when I drew this same card, at the end, we always do a meditation. And I have no idea what their meditation was. But my meditation was, I just tuned them out. My meditation was me in front of a prison cell with two men, my dad and my rapist, inside. And I was the guard, and I was justified, and they deserved it, da 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 da. Well, I finally decided that I wanted to be happy. So I put the key in, turned the key, opened the door, and let them out. And in doing that, I realized that they weren't the ones that had been in prison. I was. And I then extended that to myself. And so I learned to love and forgive myself. And as I did that, then I didn't need all the judgment for me or for others. And then finally, I'm kind of unique. I've shared the rape lots of times, and I've had lots of people say, well, how can you be grateful for being raped? And what I explained to them is that all the experiences in my life have led to who I am today. And today I like who I am. So were it not for the rape, I wouldn't be all of who I am today. So love, first of yourself and then of others. Forgiveness, again, first myself, then others. And then gratitude for all that we have. And the more I'm grateful for what I have, the more that opens up.
Wow. Absolutely beautiful, Mike. Absolutely beautiful. Love, forgiveness, gratitude, and especially for ourselves. And that is the key. That is the foundation. That's where it all begins.
Yeah.
And, the whole, like you had said, I mean, at different forms, different degrees, childhood, we all have our traumas and we all have our stories. And I know for me, I thought I was the only one.
Exactly.
In my mind, our family was full of black sheep, and everyone else in the neighborhood had white picket fences around their houses. No one had problems, no one had issues, but my family was, a little dysfunctional.
Yeah,
So,
and
and then as you grow older, you realize, we really all share such similar challenges and
we're a lot
stories
more
there.
alike than we're different. In 12 step, we talk about unique-itis. And part of the reason I share as much as I do is because I'm looking for that man or that woman or that kid out there that think, God, I'm not like him. We spend our time judging our insides with their outsides. And so I share so that they know that they're not unique. And this kind of goes into the next question too, that if I can make it with my crazy thoughts, maybe they can too.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Let's get into your third question. I love this question. It's a beautiful question. What would you tell the addict who doesn't believe he or she can change, or the person contemplating suicide?
And just backing up to what I just said, we're not unique. There's a lot more in common than we sometimes would like to believe. And bringing that out into the light takes the power away from it. So I would say to the addict, if you're trying to do it by yourself, it's going to be a problem. However, the first three steps of the 12 step are, one says, I can't. So admitting that you can't. Second one says there's someone that can, meaning our higher power. And then the third one is that I humbly ask for help. Taking those steps, I defy anyone to not be able to overcome what they consider to be the darkness in their soul. Now, in terms of suicide, I think more so. One of my big, obviously, I speak to 12-step people, but one of my other big groups is the LGBTQ community, especially here in Utah, because we have such a high suicide rate among our teens. And it's not fair to them. They need to know that they're okay just the way they are, that it's okay to be gay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be weird like me. It's okay to be
Good.
who you are. God only made one of you, and God wouldn't have made you if there wasn't a purpose for you. So, in terms of suicide, reach out, tell someone how you're feeling. Let us share with you. I've been there. And I'm so glad I'm alive. I'm so glad that I have my daughters and my grandkids and my friends. And there is hope. Those three uh, um, legs of the stool. I'll help you love yourself. I'll help you learn to forgive, and I'll help you to express gratitude. In fact, one of the things I suggest to everyone is that they keep a gratitude journal. And every night or every morning, just write a couple things that you're grateful for. And with those things, we don't have to have suicide, even if I'm very different than what my dad wanted me to be. And it took me years to be okay with that. I thought the only way I could please my dad was to become an apostle in the Mormon church. I'll never be that or even close to that. But I'm okay with who I am. And I know that God loves me. And the more authentic I become, the more I love myself.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And to empower the youth, empowering the youth, empowering the youth. And that's what you're doing, Mike, with connecting with them and sharing with them that they are okay. Don't need to fit into any particular mold. Weird is good. Any other final comments for your highlight, Mike?
Wow, you've brought a lot out of me.